You're listening to Midlife Women Entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Lynette Turner. Today, Sandy Zeldes is here to unpack the hidden stress underneath self-sabotage and why this isn't a willpower problem. We're going to talk all about what really drives cravings in midlife, what drives stress in midlife without us even knowing, and how tapping can help you release the charge so you can feel calmer, clearer, and back in control. Sandy, welcome to the show. Give yourself a bit of an introduction, and then we're going to take it from there.
Awesome. Thanks, Lynette. Thanks for having me here. Appreciate it. I know it took a lot for us to get here, so I'm glad we're here today. I was a chef for a long time, a holistic nutritionist, and I'd spent my entire life, even the studies at university, focused on health and healing, and was very smart, very, knowledgeable, shall we say. I even taught healthy cooking classes, and I struggled with, out of control cravings, even though I knew better, right? And I was very successful in so many other areas of my life, and I couldn't understand how I couldn't get a handle with the food, what was going on, right? And I noticed that so many women, in fact, I personally feel this is an epidemic, are in the same boat, right? And my clients will always say to me, I don't understand. I know what to do, but I can't seem to get myself to do it. Or, they're struggling with these cravings year after year after year, and the stubborn weight, the resistant weight, right? That doesn't come off no matter their best efforts, and they're feeling shame and humiliated and stuck. And so that's what I have primarily helped women with. And of course, the deeper root causes, healing the root causes.
Yeah. Sandy, on our pre-call, you talked a lot about hidden stress.
Yeah.
And I don't know what made that just for me it just was so relatable because I don't even think sometimes we even understand how much stress we are under. And I think about even the other day, I think I told you this on our pre-call, my phone rang and it was a little bit on the high side, but I was just like, and I was in this state of, I actually checked in with myself. I thought, whoa, why did I react that way? Like, what does hidden stress really look like for a midlife woman who's probably pretty high functioning? I would say I'm very high functioning. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I use these different terms. I say high achievers, high functioning. You've got everything else together in your life. You're a mom, you've got a career, partner. Typically, a lot of my clients have partners, and they're really functioning in the rest of their lives. And we get so good. This is the problem, right? I mean, it's a metaphor that everyone uses, but it really works. We don't recognize our own stress. It's like the frog in the pot boiling slowly, and we're used to it. And all we're aware of are the symptoms, right? So typical symptoms, but I have some other things to say about that. Sleep interruptions, not being able to sleep well or deeply or enough, or feeling like you wake up and you're not rested. What you just said is actually a great example. Feeling jumpy or anxious, like you're not calm, you react to things, you're overreactive maybe. Although I don't think that's top of mind for most people. They're just used to that feeling, but that can be one of them. Getting, really irritable for not knowing why. Obviously the food cravings, it's the most common. Just finding yourself in the fridge at night and you don't know why. You're not hungry, can't stop. And then just the slow weight loss resistance, right? This is a big symptom. I call it a symptom. It's not a cause. People aren't lazy. It's not about discipline. In fact, my clients are some of the most disciplined people on the planet, right? And so if more willpower or discipline was going to solve it, they would have by now. So, that chronic feeling of not being satisfied when you eat, that is a symptom as well. So like a lot of my clients, it's really subtle for some of them, right? It's not just binge eating, which is on one end of the spectrum. They'll just find themselves eating a lot extra or eating as they're cleaning up from dinner. And then they've gained 10, 15, 20 pounds after, years of doing this, or just not being able to quit eating sweets, right? So they're really health conscious. They're eating really well, but they're overdoing the sweets. And many of my clients, I would say a good 75 to 80%, like a high percentage, also use alcohol. Now I don't use clinical terms. I'm not a clinician. I don't diagnose and treat, but they will tell me later that, actually I'm concerned about how much I'm drinking as well. And it's the extra cocktail, and they're like, I don't like that I do this. And the big problem isn't the cocktail or the food. It's that they will say that they feel out of control with it, that they can't calm down without it. This is their wind down. This is how they relax. That's the key. And it's not a problem until you say it's a problem. Like I'm not the food police. I hate, even the way people see, you say the word nutrition, or I'm a chef. I'm a food lover. I am not the food police. I'm not against anything. I'm not against all kinds of foods. I'm not against alcohol, even like the occasional cocktail, right? It's how we use things. And when you feel out of control or compulsive, or you need it to be able to feel okay at night, relax, calm down, unwind, reward yourself, comfort yourself, soothe yourself, deal with a stressful situation, and you feel like it's affecting your health, right? That's what they will report to me. And that, again, this doesn't mean that everyone is in this category. It's just the people who are really sick of it. They've been doing it for years and years, typically. It's not a one hit one. It's not like, oh, I just started doing this thing. The people who are struggling the most, I would say, are those that have been doing this for a lifetime. There's a coping strategy, right? And they've lost, because it works so well to kind of comfort and keep us numb to what's going on. We forget why we started in the first place. We don't even remember how it started or why. And so it doesn't make logical sense. That's why we don't solve it from inside.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So a lot of women would think, well, if I just had a little bit more willpower, and we talked a little bit about this on the pre-call. So how do you explain the difference between willpower and that sort of nervous system that's stuck in that bit of survival mode, as you might?
Yeah, that's right. Well, I think when we have to use willpower, there's something wrong. So that should be a signal that, wait a minute. So a lot of people will tell me, I'll feel like I'm done with this issue when I just stop eating the sugar. And I'm like, but are you white knuckling it? Like, are you just doing really good with willpower? Because that's not what we do. That's not what I do. That's not healed. So if you have to use willpower, I would argue that something inside, we're resistant. There's a need for safety and protection.
Yeah.
It's always the case with the subconscious and why we do what we do. We're all using, the subconscious mind is running the show, really, with our behaviors. And so if we're doing something that feels compulsive or out of control, there's always a reason, and willpower is always going to fail because that reason is important, or we wouldn't be doing it.
So what you just said there makes me think about a question then. How do I know the difference between, like, do you have like sort of common signs that cravings are stress driven and not just me being hungry?
That is a really good question. And it was the first part of my transformation 25 years ago because I was constantly hungry. And when I went back to nutrition school, I learned how to solve that, what to eat to feel satisfied and heal the actual physiology of cravings. And then the second step was healing the emotional need for when stress gets out of control, right? So there was two parts to this. So that answer is part of what I do with people. And you do have to separate it because there is such a thing as physiology, and we have bypassed our physiology in this culture today. I feel we are addicted to dieting and thinking of food as a problem. I hate that. If anyone gets anything from today's call, I'm always saying, and I'm 100% certain of this, that it's never about the food when we have cravings repeatedly year after year after year. There's something else going on that's not natural. It is very, very normal, but it doesn't have to be that way. It's very simple to solve for, individual ancestral nutritional needs. That's like, we can fix that. But we have to first fix the need for the coping mechanism of sugar, junk foods, or alcohol, or whatever it is, right? To even be able to get there. Or the addiction to dieting. I've had clients who, how do I even say it? It's like they can't stop thinking so negatively about food that it's almost like one of their biggest barriers to just eating naturally. And we've all heard it. Everyone's heard it. I'm sure anyone who's dieted for many years, year after year after year, has heard that you cannot starve yourself and lose weight long term. You just make it worse. Each year you do that, you make it worse. You gain more weight. That's not how our metabolism works. We're not meant to starve ourselves. And there's studies that show even after 2 weeks in otherwise normal individuals without any dieting behavior or binge behavior will develop chronic binge behavior after even 20% food restriction. It's
Wow.
physiology at
Crazy.
that point. So,
Yeah.
however, the people who get stuck with the dieting addiction, I'm going to call it, I actually think it's a full blown addiction. Did it start with the physiology or did it start with the emotions? 100% of the time, in my experience, over 20 years working with women, it started from the emotions. Nobody starts some kind of addictive habit, even dieting, without something going on, right? There was something, a pattern.
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
And they can't maybe always recognize it.
Of
That's why they
course.
work with
Of course.
you.
Yeah.
So why do you think then it hits critical mass in midlife? Like even for women who may not have even struggled with weight or cravings before. And for me, I would say I fit in that category. But I feel like based on our call and what you do, and you do work with a lot of midlife women. So why is that hitting so critically in midlife? What happened?
So many reasons. But the long and short, is we forget that, or maybe we don't know. Maybe people don't know. I think like a clinician a lot. So you have a history. Your body has a history. It's not one day, you're just sick or having a problem or starting to gain weight. Something is going on that's accumulating. It is getting worse. I mean, the word worse, I hate saying it like that, but it's accumulating over the years. The stress doesn't just, it's having an effect on your hormones over time. So one of my teachers who I adore, and this is long ago, and it was new for me at the time. Now I'm totally 100% certain. We are so abusive to our systems in Western culture. And then we expect our bodies to perform and just, and it's crazy. And the amount of stress, it's not natural to hit menopause and be like completely blown out with your hormones, right? I'm going through it because of stress very late in the game, but I don't think I had to. I was doing fine moving into it until stressors happened, right? So it's an accumulation if you don't stop and heal it. And we do not have to enter midlife with our hormones completely offline. That's ridiculous. That is a sign of chronic stress. Chronic stress. This is not a natural way to be, right? So I'm working with someone young right now, and I'm always telling her, I'm so happy that you're doing this now because most of my clients are my age or older, and they haven't really been able to heal a lot of patterns until now. And, it's an accumulative effect. And, she's getting the jump start on hormone balance, basically. And hormones matter, but it's our stress that's really the cause. You see, it's our stress that depletes our hormones the fastest. And then when we're stressed, we tend to, it's like a circle. It's not a straight line. What affects what? Well, they all are impacting. This chronic dieting we're doing is the worst thing you can do for stress. It's the worst thing you can do for your stress. I can't say it enough. You have to nurture your body when you're under stress, right? And that's what we don't do. And often we can't. A lot of people can't. But it's also the mentality that, oh my gosh, I'm gaining weight. Oh no. And then you stop eating, or you're restricting food, or you go on the salad and smoothie cleanse. And, it doesn't really work like that necessarily. Is there a time for that? Of course. Cleanses are incredibly important and detoxes in their place. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But as we're depleted over stress, it's a surprise to many people to hear that we need to build back. We need to be in this like incredibly nurturing, nourishing phase of life. And so for a lot of women, I think it's a real discovery of who they really are and being done with people pleasing and like all the patterns, the communication that didn't work, saying yes when they mean no, it's a good time of life to be authentic with ourselves.
So let's go down a little deeper. You talk a lot about self-sabotage with health. How do you specifically, as a midlife coach, help a woman recognize she's in a self-sabotage loop without shaming herself? Because sometimes when we realize what we're doing to ourselves, we can kind of start to feel a sense of shame. Like, why did I do that? I should have, could have, would have. And how do you help a woman recognize she's in that loop? And so
Well,
that she can do it without that shame.
yeah, good question, Lynette. And honestly, the women who come to me, they already feel so ashamed. That's why many of them tell me later about other habits. They're not comfortable sharing it first. The food and the weight is what they share. And then later I find out, which is, they think I'm going to judge them. And I don't, because I see all of it as, self-sabotage in quotes is really protection. It's not what we think it is. There's nothing to be ashamed of. And so they already feel that way, typically, anyone who comes to me. So the most important thing is to not feel ashamed, right? And with tapping, we can clear that. We can work on the shame, the blame, because this is just a symptom. It's just protection. What we're doing, what our coping mechanisms are there to protect us. It's how the subconscious works. And so when there's these compulsive cravings or habits or even addictive, though I use that word, but I'm not clinically using the word, things we can't let go of year after year after year, it always started for a reason. So there's no shame and blame in that. In fact, it's genius, right? This is how we took care of ourselves. Now we just want to heal it and move on to finding peace, which is very, very, very possible and doable with tapping.
Yeah. Well, since you're on the topic of tapping, let's tap into that a little bit more, pardon the pun. So obviously you have different modalities in your coaching practice, but tapping is one of the stronger sort of veins that you use when you're helping women. And so explain first of all, what does tapping help release that maybe talk therapy or another diet often can't? And then the second question is, how does somebody use tapping when they're feeling a certain way? How do they know? What's the trigger that they should start to do a bit of the tapping?
Well, tapping is always good. So it's just like brushing your teeth. I always tell clients, if you're in the bathroom, clients will tell me that, in really stressful family situations or work or whatever, I can't tap or whatever. And I'm like, well, you can go to the bathroom. And 2 good minutes is better than 0. It's just amazing how fast you can. So it's a release technique. Just in short, to keep it really simple, it's a very effective, fast way when used correctly and practiced and, working with someone to get even deeper, to release emotional stress and trap subconscious beliefs and emotions. And it's profound. In fact, it's so effective that people often don't remember how they felt before, which is really interesting. There's even a name for that. It just removes something completely. You have awareness and insight, but it'll be a new awareness and insight after you clear an old pattern. So it's really profound. And it's the number one way I've worked with people for 20 years, almost 20 years.
Yeah. And I have a friend and often, I'll see him go like this where, I'm tapping my head for anybody who's just listening to this podcast. And I'll be like, oh, what are you doing there? And he's like, oh, just a little bit of tapping. But I never really and even when we started this podcast, I wasn't feeling very good. You're having trouble with the mic. We were both sort of a little bit flustered. And so we just did a little tapping session together. And I think what it did for me was, because I have never done it before, for me, what it did was it just kind of, so it just helped me okay, focus in. What are we doing? Let's clear the energy a bit. But so explain it a little bit more, why is he tapping on his head? You were tapping on your cheeks, you're tapping on your collarbone area. Give us a little bit of actually let's make it a little bit practical. What is one small step a listener can do when she's feeling that sort of urge for craving or an urge to numb out?
Well, if you can get yourself to do it, you tap. You tap on their meridian points, their traditional meridian points that have been mapped out for thousands of years by Eastern cultures. And we're using the same meridians. There's different meridians you can use, and we don't need to go into that, but there's kind of a basic recipe that one of the original founders, Gary Craig, well, he is the founder. There's someone before him who pioneered tapping on meridian points, and then Gary took it, and then there's more people since then. But basically, it's a simple recipe of tapping on meridian points and how we do it to get real specific results with releasing emotional stress. That makes sense? So it looks very, very, very simple, but to get effective relief from something that you've been struggling with for many, many years does take, knowing what to do, right? But you can get started just tapping on your own. I just hesitate. So there's so many tapping videos out there now, and there's so many people kind of dabbling in it. And I just want to say to the audience that in order to get deep results, you do want to take it seriously and work with someone to help you get those results. If you're struggling with something that's, complicated and you've been working on for a long time. But tapping on the meridian points, anyone can look at a video or just Google where they are. I'll show you one of my favorite points that I've shown clients before that's not in any charts.
Okay.
That is kind of the anaphylactic shock point and is the fleshy part of your thumb. And you can tap or rub. And I have had people literally stop, literally anaphylactic shock for her one of my clients, and she could not believe it. And so I frequently tap on points that you don't see, just because I know so many. You can look up points. I love the lung meridian. We do this one for, there's lots of reasons we tap for this one, but we include a point nearby. It's when you're working on it for yourself, you can look up specific meridian points, you can look up tapping, and you can play with it. I just helped someone, and I use my intuition. Of course, I've been doing this so long, and I just helped a client. It was really interesting. She didn't even know she was angry. And it's not like she sounded it, there was nothing about it. And then my intuition just said, let's do the lung meridian for a minute. And, let's see. And it was absolutely inflamed. And I mean, we spent like 20 minutes on the lung meridian, all that trapped, stored pain. And there's different points for the lung meridian, by the way. So we played with different ones. We made sure we got it right for her in that moment. And the release was profound. And what did that do for her? Well, what it does is, release the need to cope with, she used to drink extra. Like, it's funny, I don't even remember that about her. Mostly it was the sugar, but for her, she also would go drink. When she was with friends, she would drink. And it would be several cocktails, not just one or two, And she didn't like that because she's this very health conscious person. And she felt like it was extremely sabotaging to her health. It was hard at work the next day. She ate funny the next day. She didn't like it. She really wanted to stop. That's the main issue. Did she have to stop? It wasn't up to me. I'm not the alcohol police. What if you want to do that, that's fine. But she did not want to do that. And she completely forgot about the alcohol after that session. I mean, completely. And she didn't report it. She didn't tell me, oh, I gave up. It's like, it just didn't matter. It wasn't even a point of discussion until I checked in. I think it was a couple weeks later. I just remember that actually, because there's so many things that happen when you release this trapped, stored emotion that is throbbing and causing so many of our patterns and habits and habitual need to cope.
So if somebody was listening to this podcast right now, and she's, basically tried everything, she feels tired of starting over, what does ready look like? Like when, and what's the best next step if she wants your help? So when does she know she's going to be ready? And what's the next best step if, she wants to engage with you, Sandy?
Well, you're ready if you're just done. And you really, really, really want change. Because nobody can give it to you. I can't, even with the best of experience and tools, you have to want it. You have to fight for yourself, and we have to be committed, or with anything in life, right? So if someone's really urgently wanting change and willing to commit, yes, they're perfect. It's a perfect place to begin. Being it when you're done is just the best time. And so they can find me at sandyzeldes.com, and I know we'll have the link. We also have a page prepared for your listeners, so we'll get that ready in the comments. And I also have a course, a best-selling course on Daily Om. I don't know if you've heard of it in Canada. It's very popular here, and it's called Healing Subconscious Blocks to Weight Loss. And that link will be available. Yeah, and then I have a free audio for listeners. It's a very short audio, and I'll be updating that soon with a different audio, but I wanted to keep it short and simple and sweet for people to just kind of take the edge off.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, listen, Sandy, you introduced me to something I had never really looked into before. And I think that just a whole different perspective. So thank you for sharing. And I'll have all the links in the description of the podcast episode. So thank you for sharing your time with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, Lynette.